Good afternoon. On behalf of Sue, Nancy, Amy, Jennifer, and the many other Baldwin family members present today or here in spirit, I'd like to welcome you all to this celebration of a most iconic, visionary, and extraordinary man. It's uplifting to see so many of Bob's friends, neighbors, and fellow church congregants here. And it's heartwarming to see so many former students, parents, trustees, and faculty members coming to pay tribute. Your presence attests to Bob's ability to touch and change lives. My name is Sharona Barzilai, and I was fortunate to have been hired by the boss in 1980, to have worked closely with him, to have been mentored by him, and to have maintained a lasting friendship with him since his retirement from college prep in 1990. My mind has been swirling in recent weeks, creating a collage of memories. Many of those memories are of seemingly trivial moments, but collectively they unite to bring home to me the huge punch Bob packed in the daily life and development of the school, and on me and so many others personally. I remember stepping over Genty, the dog, when I first met Bob at the old school for my college prep job interview. And I remember his testing me during that interview about the relative importance of garnering respect from students versus establishing friendly rapport with them. Though I had known him for all of 10 minutes, his choice between those two options, respect, was crystal clear to me. I remember sitting with him at the long brown table in his office at the new campus, painstakingly going through college application checkboxes, which in those days were paper only, and deliberating about how to assess every applicant on every one of those boxes. His wry wit and playfulness during those marathon sessions were always in evidence. One year, college left a bit of blank space beneath the last checkbox line. And following the rows of questions about intellectual curiosity and academic integrity, Bob wrote in for a particular student, quote, tuba playing ability, and checked the column labeled one of the best ever. I remember Bob's face turning red with frustration, or more likely anger, when I tiptoed into his office to break the news that the bus company that we used for our Eastern College tours had once again assigned us the driver whom we had previously dubbed Wrong Turn John. And I remember towards the end of one of those trips, letting about 36 college prep juniors loose for dinner on Nassau Street in Princeton. We told them that it was because we trusted them to be chaperone-free and because we wanted to give them a taste of the independence that college life would eventually afford them. In truth, it was because we wanted to have just one good meal without the din and with a glass of wine, or in Bob's case, a Manhattan. I can visualize Bob shaking his head at me, and I can almost hear him admonishing me for using words like iconic, visionary, and extraordinary in describing him. Hyperbole, or what he would have considered hyperbole, was not part of his New England nature. He was more of the stiff upper lip, uncomplaining, understated, and modest sort. He was also in many ways a man of contrasts. He was masterful in his forethought, planning, and execution of the building and relocation of the school to this campus. And yet, he would procrastinate until mid-morning of graduation day to commit his graduation speeches to those ever-present yellow legal pads of his, a practice that incidentally never failed to drive Joyce Baldwin a little bit crazy. He had a bit of a macho bent. He found the flowery pinkish-red fabric on the couch in his office unbecoming to him. He would have preferred a deep brown manly leather. And yet, his eyes would well up with tears when he listened to students performing beautiful choral music, or when he witnessed a student perfectly placing a soccer ball into the corner of the net. He was most deliberate in thought and extremely measured in his spoken word. And yet, he could be impulsive and impractical. Just ask his daughters about his airplane purchase or about the farm in New Hampshire. Bob and I didn't always agree. In fact, we rather enjoyed sparring. He berated me for favoring frozen yogurt. I lectured him about the fat content of ice cream. I tried for years to convince him of his sexist folly in having Joyce iron his shirts. He tried to convince me, as he had convinced himself, that Joyce actually liked ironing his shirts. Those minor differences never lessened my affection for Bob. I always knew that he was one of the most decent and loyal people I had ever encountered, even when Joyce was most isolated by her illness. The tenderness with which he stroked her face moved me. And even after he'd been retired for more than 2 decades, he always hungered for news about the school's programs and players, that he had an absolutely unwavering moral compass, and that serving the interests of students always came first, were evident to anyone who ever encountered him. In recent years, my visits with Bob most often took place on Saturday or Sunday afternoons. He'd be sitting in his recliner with Sweetie Pie the cat on his lap, and we would spend our time together talking about family, about books, about the world, about the school. Even in his 80s and 90s, it never surprised me that he was better read than I. It never surprised me that he was better informed about politics and world events. It never surprised me that when we reminisced about former colleagues or students, he could conjure up names before I could. In fact, on those rare occasions when we both gave up, he would often call me triumphantly a couple hours later and provide me with the name that included us. By that time, I had already forgotten that I was even supposed to try to remember. I last visited with Bob about 10 days before he died. His mind was as active as ever, and our conversation meandered, as it always did. Among other topics, we spoke about how much he appreciated having daughters, and about how attentive his had been to him. I'll miss those companionable weekend afternoons, and I'll wish that I had more often crashed the Friday afternoon glass of wine dates that he had with Murray Cohen. I know, though, that I'll always carry Bob's sage counsel in my heart and mind, and I can only hope that as a result of my 36-year history with him, some of his wisdom, compassion, integrity, humaneness, and can-do spirit will have rubbed off. I'll forever be grateful to him, my boss, my mentor, my friend.
Member of the class of '62, former faculty member, former member of the Board of Trustees, dear friend of Mr. Baldwin's and of the school's, could not be with us today, but shared this remembrance. When Robert Baldwin Jr., Mr. Baldwin, Bob, depending, became our second head in 1969, college prep was already an extraordinary educational institution, but unrealistically limited in its program, and loudly grinding its keel on the cruel reefs of financial reality. Mary Harley Jenks, the founder, was steely in most areas, but curiously removed in some, of which the key one was money. The school, as it existed, was noble but doomed if it kept on as it was. Bob's challenge was to keep it noble while making it viable. He pulled this off, but it took some doing. When he titled his retirement memoir, Becoming a Real School, he was describing a long, complex achievement, his more than anyone else's. It involved big changes. If the program was to be broadened and enriched, more students, and not just any students, had to be attracted. More students meant more faculty, and not just any faculty. Expanded facilities, almost anything in the short run, expanded involvement by the school community, and all of this vital expansion and elaboration had to enrich but not compromise the school's core values: intellectual excellence, personal civility, and social modesty. It was to be the intellect, not the pocketbook, that set the tone. So much to do. Miss Jenks had no interest in sports, for example. They weren't part of her own experience, and she didn't want them to become the focus, as they so often do. Bob, on the other hand, thought that sports were essential and that they would enhance the academic core if they were done right. He proceeded to prove this by such improvisations as unisex teams. This was heretical in those days, but it maximized the opportunities available to a small student body. Later, on the present campus, the new campus, as it was called, he insisted that the gym be a graceful structure in keeping with the rest of the buildings, and pulled it in as close as possible so that sports would be part of the whole and not out there. His concern for function and symbolism extended to all corners of the curriculum. If the arts were of necessity hole-in-the-corner operations in the beginning, it was Bob's determination that they should not be so forever. On the new campus, drama has a major interest in the auditorium, dance has its own studio, and art and music have their own handsome buildings. He focused intensely on how the present campus would structure the school experience. The danger of the Canyon site was a wandering discontinuity. He wanted a village feel, so we have the convivial open spaces meandering up the middle with lots of odd spaces and corners where students can cluster together but still be right there with everyone else. He insisted on the green-framed, three-pane windows on every building so that although the building shapes vary and jink around, they all seem a piece together. He placed the head's office with big windows right on the courtyard, so the head sees everything going on and everyone sees the head there, working, meeting, visiting. He insisted on clean, harmonious design and execution in large scale and small. On one inspection visit to the art building, then in progress, he and the chairman of the board discovered, to their horror, that the contractor had skip-troweled the walls and ceiling, leaving a busy texture instead of the serene, smooth surface called for in the plans. No, no, they cried, and insisted that it all be properly sanded down. The early faculty included a number of strong and often eccentric personalities. Oddness didn't bother Bob so long as it didn't interfere with results. But if a faculty member forgot precisely who they were and why they were there, they were presently gone. No tantrums, no scenes, but no apologies for requiring that everyone's mind stay conscious of that right. So he was one tough cookie, but that wasn't how he came across. His manner was amiable. He had a warm smile and an engaging little chuckle. When people were talking, he listened with careful attention. In discussing some issues, he would sometimes fall into a reflective silence for a time before looking up again and continuing in his measured and thoughtful way. You didn't jump into those pauses. You waited. He was generous and tolerant. He didn't sweat the small stuff, but the large stuff he kept a firm grip on. Faculty, staff, trustees, parents, students, there were many players in the school community with many strong opinions. But after he had listened, he made his decision, and that was that. Sometimes people tore their hair in frustration, but at least everyone knew the status of things. In any organization, clarity is gold. He knew what he wanted and why to make things happen. If he didn't sweat the small stuff, he didn't overlook it either. For example, he would wander around the campus picking up litter, which of course everyone noticed. He didn't exhibit stress that I could detect, but it can't have been easy. Once I mentioned to him that my overriding impression of those early years was of someone running down a steep hill without quite falling, but still too fast to stop. He laughed and agreed it was just like that. Then he looked over at Mrs. B, and the two of them laughed together. Then the laughs petered out into quiet smiles, and they shook their heads. They shook them once more. Yes, it was just like that. It still is, of course. Times change. People come and go. Bob told me once, new challenges will always arrive. You can't package a human enterprise, which is what a school is. You can't distill immutable laws. Each generation finds its own way. He said these things with what seemed to me an improbable serenity. Granted, it's worked very well so far. In essentials, little has changed. The intellect rules. Growth, discovery, the classroom, the teacher-student interaction is still the central event. But so many crises have challenged the school, I said. So many talented people have devoted their lives to it. So many strong people have wanted things for it and from it. So many have invested serious bucks and major sweat equity into it. So many enthusiasms, some glorious, some batty, have bounced against it. How is it possible that all these tempests haven't blown it off its foundations? How has the school kept its core intact all of this time? By keeping its eye on the ball, said Bob. All those parties you've mentioned got involved because they recognized the core is what they wanted. Each new idea or novelty gets tested against the core by vigilant constituents who are open to new possibilities but aren't about to spoil a good thing. Well, I said, it seems scary to depend on the uninterrupted good sense and adventurous conservatism of generation after generation of administrators, faculty, parents, and students to keep moving and testing onto the far horizon without messing things up. It's worked so far, he said, and smiled that quiet smile born of all those years.
My name is John Brett, and I'm a son-in-law to Bob Baldwin. And I say that because all of Bob's son-in-laws are here today. We have a Honduran, we have an Italian, we have a Texan, we have a Californian, and we have one from foreign soil, Cincinnati. Some of us are current, some of us are former sons-in-law, but I think the fact that all of us, the fact that all are here today speaks volumes for the man that we are honoring, Bob Baldwin. I first met Bob in April of 1972. I know this because on March 22nd of that same year, at 4:40 in the afternoon, I met the then and to this day most beautiful woman in the world, Bob's third daughter, Amy Carlton Baldwin. It was a blind date, set up by a person here in the room today. And it was a meeting at UC Davis where I was about to graduate as a senior. Amazingly, that first date led to another, unbelievably. And this one was where I came to the Berkeley home to pick Amy up. I got there, all those stairs. That view. Amy opened the door. That woman. Those two pianos. The bookcase was stuffed with books. Man, I am not worthy. Although the meeting was short, both Bob and Joyce were most kind and welcoming. Despite what must have been a flood of would-be suitors for their daughters over the years, here was another one. The encounter started a series of great times at and beyond the Baldwin home. Dinners with light jazz on the stereo. Frantic searches for my horseradish to accompany Joyce's signature roast beef. Apparently there was something called currant jelly that they usually eat. Music around the piano with Bob's great voice matching Joyce's soprano. Flirtations with his cello and flute. And especially watching the ball game on that 20-inch TV on the hardback chair in the kitchen. What a fan. It was all we could do to end up getting him like, what, Jeff, a 40-inch or something like that. And decades of wonderful family trips to New Hampshire, to camp, and to the beloved Folly Farm. Bob had made it a point to share his love of New England and the Maine, New Hampshire experiences of his youth with all of his family. And so it was that over the years I developed a love, respect, and admiration for them both. And by his very demeanor, Bob taught me a lot. Just a few things. First, his well-considered reasoning, insight, and powerful ability to connect brain, heart, with mouth, with the clearest and most earnest results. I never saw Bob shoot from the hip. He loved to ponder. For some of us of the ready, fire, aim persuasion, this could be annoying. But the output was always better, and the lessons learned for me never clearer. Nice turn. Bob had a penchant for the arts, music, love of literature. At Amy's and my rehearsal dinner, just down on the marina here, August 16, 1974, Bob rose to recite a poem. Those of you who knew him well and were with the school knew that he liked poetry quite a bit. And he rose to recite that poem that he'd written about a parent's perspective of daughters being married. I wish I could remember it all, but I was especially touched when it concluded, "On the day of white lace and satin, if you're lucky enough, they'll marry a brat." I guess I fooled him. Bob took great care to create opportunities for the extended family to vacation in New Hampshire at Rocky Wolf Deep Haven Camp. The same friends from Virginia, Chicago, and New Jersey always attended at the same time in July. We all loved to chat and explore opinions, so we formed the Deep Haven Debating Society. 12 to 15 of us would gather in a circle at the big cottage. Bob was asked to be the honorary president by our friends. Not by the family, by our friends. Not because it was the oldest, but because they knew his topics would be sincere, inclusive of the participants, and meant to foster reflection. Not to titillate or lead to a food fight. He never disappointed. Second, Bob had a keen sense of being able to anticipate and see the character, inner beauty, and innate abilities of others. I am sure that those of you associated with the school have seen this many times, and in fact it's been mentioned already. But let me give you one personal reflection. As our daughter Tyler graduated from college and began job searches, she also toyed with a modeling firm, just to see how it might work. Of course, that led to a photo shoot to build a portfolio. Some weeks later, the photos came back, and I got to tell you, holy smokes, I mean, this was Cosmo. This was Vogue. Really top-notch stuff. It says, is that Tyler? Holy Toledo. I wasn't sure how I could be more proud of her at that time, but this took the cake, and I thought, man, this is great. So as a proud papa, I shared the photos with Bob. You should know his reaction. His comment was that he really didn't like them. They really didn't show the true Tyler. She was much more beautiful than that. As always, Bob's unspoken words provided the most food for thought and a reminder to look beyond the obvious. And finally, his thoughtfulness. Bob once mentioned to me that growing up in New England meant you needed to learn how to sail. It was a rite of passage. Bob owned a sailboat and later a motorboat, a 1952 wooden Penyan runabout, which we used at the New Hampshire camp for many years, and we still have it. As with some of us, that Penyan got pretty ratty later in life and needed an overhaul. Although many New England boat people were available for the job, Bob was kind enough to let me try. 2 years later, takes a while. In 2006, we brought it back to New Hampshire, trailing it all the way up from Atlanta. Fresh paint, upholstery, mahogany replacing white oak. I was pretty pleased with it, actually. I had planned a ta-da unveiling at the lake, but as we pulled into the gas station in the town just before the lake, who pulls in behind us while we're getting gas but John Byers and Nancy with Bob and Joyce. And there was the book. No ta-da. Bob got out, took a look, walked up and down, touched some of the sides, and in a very low key said, "How to go," which was one of his trademark sayings. Well, it's not quite the reaction I had hoped. 2 weeks later, at our favorite local restaurant, as we were preparing to head home, Bob and Joyce presented me with a framed painting of the boat, tied to the camp dock that he had commissioned from the artist father of one of our camp friends during those 2 weeks we were there. Once again, the kindness of thoughtful gestures went well beyond the clap on the back I thought I wanted to have. So Bob, thanks for your lessons on reason, thought, and expression, your quality character, your thoughtfulness through the decades, but most importantly, thank you for your daughter, her sisters and their families, and for you and Joyce accepting me and making such a difference in my life. I'll miss you.
It is an honor to be here. It is truly an honor to call Bob Baldwin my grandfather, Bambi, as he was known to us. Legend has it that I wasn't yet able to pronounce the word Grampy when I was a toddler, so as the first grandchild, he got that unique moniker instead. He embraced it, of course. There probably isn't anyone else with that nickname, which is fitting. To me, Bamp was, thank you. To me, Bamp, as it got shortened as I got older, to me, Bamp was a prototypical gentleman, chivalrous, mild-mannered, courteous and noble. As a kid, I daydreamed that he and my grandmother held court at San Luis Road and benevolently reigned over all they surveyed, as if theirs was the only house on that hill. I reveled in being his subject, his squire. My grandparents sat in their thrones, heads of the dinner table, as minstrels played, usually Benny Goodwin or the like, Sir Bambi, Lady Nana. I looked up to them and worked hard to impress them. Their blessing and acceptance meant everything to me, and they gave it willingly and often. Nana and Bamp were remarkably generous to us, with us, and some of my favorite memories are the time we spent together and the memories they created with me. Growing up, we spent many summers together in New Hampshire. Squam Lake was Bamp's Walden. To him, Squam was an awareness as much as it was a place to be. And he and my grandmother introduced us to this magical place, which helped form many of our strongest childhood memories, some of which we have duplicated with our kids. It was there, with Bambi by my side, where I canoed and sailed for the first time, fished for the first time, and drove the Penyan, his wooden motorboat, and thanks John for keeping her seaworthy. Bamp and I also shared a love of aeronautics. On more than one occasion, he flew that four-seater from Oakland to Stockton, picked me up, took me on a tour around Lake Tahoe, stopped for lunch at Nut Tree, and back home. He would let me steer while he explained the concepts of lift, thrust, and yaw, and what it was like learning to fly as a young man in the Army in World War II. touches the ground. Vampy had a Renaissance mind and could speak intelligently about nearly any topic. He held language and its meanings in high regard. He was an avid reader and would sit with the Times daily crossword until it was complete. I've inherited that compulsion as well. He commanded a seriousness in his discourse with others, but broke it easily with his signature one-liners, a skill that I strive to master myself. His dry wit and sage advice were highly prized at the dinner table. When he came into a room, I would wait patiently for the next kernel of wisdom or wisecrack, because they were equally as likely. He was an educator in the purest sense. He taught us that education is a path, a lifelong journey, a culmination of experiences as much as a gathering of facts and figures. He had high expectations for us when it came to schooling, that we develop and embrace our own path of learning, whether it be achieved conventionally or otherwise. He did not always agree with our opinions or intellectual positions, but he encouraged us to have them. He was inquisitive, especially when it came to understanding what was important to his grandchildren. He had a knack for distilling out what was meaningful to others and was genuinely interested in our pursuits. When I was a teenager, bringing friends to visit in Berkeley, I would tease them, "You better get your story straight before you get in there." He's going to ask, "What is your favorite subject, your favorite poet, your favorite artist?" You need to be prepared to discuss and have opinions. They were petrified. But in the end, his artful and gentlemanly manner made them feel at ease. He never talked down to us. He was incredibly down to earth, unpretentious and modest, yet welcoming and warm. He taught me a lot about the virtues of humility, though he once confided with me jokingly that he chose to go to Yale over Harvard as a form of rebellion to the status quo. I told him I wish I had your status quo. Lasting memories with Vamp, with not unvamp, are plentiful, to say the least. The last time I spoke with him, he called me for his 45th birthday in March. And we chatted like we always do about the weather on the East Coast, how well the Warriors were doing, how Jackson and Elizabeth, his great-grandchildren, caught their first fish at school last summer and were looking forward to going back up there this summer. He said, "You and Lynn have done a great job with this, too." Thanks, Vamp. It means a lot. I would eventually ask him, "How are you doing? How are you feeling?" like I always did. His answer was always something like, "Well, I'm good. I'm still here." We would chuckle together, knowing that we were both making light of the gravity. I love that he shared that with me, and all the other moments of our life. And he is still here in our hearts with honor, simple, profound, and true.
Hi, my name is Katie Byers, and I am the next to youngest grandchild of Vampy and the youngest daughter of Nancy Byers. Vampy was actually my last surviving grandparent, and was speaking to my cousins last night. I realized I'm not the only one in that situation. Our bond was very special to me. When I graduated high school 10 years ago, my mother and sister solicited family friends, and old teachers of mine for letters to put in a scrapbook. The scrapbook was a surprise gift to me that made me cry with joy when I received it. In the scrapbook, Bambi wrote a letter to me, signed by both him and Nana. And I would like to share a part of his letter with you. The letter is actually dated on April 21st, 2006, almost exactly 10 years before the day that he passed away. Dear Katie, when you were about 4 years old, we came to Plano for the Christmas holidays. On Christmas Day, I remember you sitting in the middle of your living room, surrounded by presents, ribbons, and torn wrappings strewn around you. I asked you, Katie, are you happy? Yes, you said, exactly happy. We soon adopted exactly happy as a family phrase expressing a degree of happiness beyond just plain happy. You make us exactly happy. Bambi created a beautiful life that allowed us grandchildren to spend time with each other and grow with each other, summer after summer in New Hampshire. I have so many memories shared with Bambi from those times at RBC. Playing the intellectual and very competitive game of Boggle until bedtime. Walking behind Nana and Bambi as they walked arm in arm down the dirt road from our cabin ex officio to dinner at the Deep Haven Dining Hall. Swimming in freezing cold Swan Lake using Nana's noodles. Watching Bambi in his white boating hat complete crossword puzzle after crossword puzzle on the cabin porch in High Pines. And learning by example that lightly salted peanuts are a cocktail hour staple. Bambi, those memories make me exactly happy. I will cherish those memories forever. Moving forward from this point in our lives, I know that we grandchildren can create our own beautiful lives that mirror and or blend Bambi's values of family, education, generosity, and of course happiness. To quote final words in Bambi's memoir, now a word for my grandchildren. Take a moment's time to look into your own hearts, into who you really are and what really replenishes you. Then develop the talents you have and look for a career that can use them. With me, it was all luck. I looked for something that I was going to enjoy until I found that something that fit. We can all find comfort in the imprints he left on our hearts, and I truly believe that Bambi will be watching over us and will be so proud of us as we all make the next significant steps in creating our lives. I would like to leave you with a beautiful poem that I found, and the poem is called I Do Not Think My Song Will End by Johnny Hathcock. I do not think my song will end, while flowers, grass, and trees abound with birds and butterflies, for I am one with these. And I believe my voice will sound upon the whispering wind, so long as even one remains among those I call friend. I shall remain in hearts and minds of loved ones that I knew, and in the rocks and hills and streams, because I love those too. So long as love and hope and dreams abide in earth and sky, weep not for me, though I be gone, I shall not really die.
Sue, the eldest daughter, with something written by Murray Cohen, who was head of the school from 1999 to 2011, and who was unable to be here today. It says, my relationship with Mr. Baldwin began with a job interview in 1976. He was seeking an experienced English teacher, and I was looking for a school that treasured teaching and valued teachers. We made a good match. I quickly learned to listen attentively and patiently, for his deliberative style took its own time as he carefully developed his thoughts and judgments, refining them even as he spoke. College prep was his school in every imaginable way in those days. He was shaping the James Lewis vision so that the school could expand and adapt and relocate while still sharpening the focus on academic integrity and authentic student-teacher relationships. He kept the administration lean and unobtrusive. Only in the last few years of shared retirement did I comfortably address him as Bob. We got together weekly whenever we could, and over chips and Chardonnay, always Hafner's, the good stuff, we recollected in tranquility, competing amiably over who could remember a student's or teacher's name from 25 or 35 years ago. He always nearly won. At some point, our visits grew longer as I started to read to him books that reflected his interest, chiefly in flying, American history, and human enterprise. The Wright brothers, Olympic rollers, the Oregon Trail. These stories of adventure and achievement dove deeply into the American spirit, and Bob enjoyed recalling his ice hockey days, his sailing and flying experiences, his taking risks and moving his young family across the country to find only after he got here his life's most important work. Just a few weeks ago, it was time for a new book, and he suggested that we read Patrick O'Brien. We started the 20-volume Aubrey Turin series, and I look forward to years of reading and reminiscing together. We didn't get beyond the first few chapters, and Aubrey's first command didn't quite leave the harbor when Bob set sail on his own, beyond our reach for now. Mr. Baldwin, my mentor, Bob, my friend, gone beyond the horizon that we saw outside his window, but that never limited his vision of what's possible.
Let's just take 30 seconds, please, while I gather myself to just reflect on Dad and your own life. And we take all that energy and bundle it into gratitude and send it to him. Can we just do that for a minute? Thank you. I wasn't going to speak for this reason. And then I thought, well, Amy has her daughter. Sue had hers. Jeff has done so much here. And I thought, what can I contribute to this? And I started thinking about how, and by the way, I'm Nancy, daughter number 2 from the top. Daughter number 2 from the top. There were many years, though, that I wanted to be the only daughter. I cannot tell you how much time I spent as a child imagining myself in between Mom and Dad all by myself. But then I was stuck with these 3, right? Well, that's what I just wanted to address very briefly today. I wanted to thank Dad and Mom for these 3. School, the junior high, all the competition, all those things that were so tough and all the growth. And Dad's lessons about equality and appreciation for each other and how someday we would really need each other as we would all go, well, for those of you in the same situation, you know what a gift your siblings become in these times. To think of being an only child right now, with the legacy Dad's left, and not have, I can't even imagine. Thank you, Sue, for your numerous trips. 3 of us living far away, and Sue coming, trekking from Stockton and back and forth, bringing homemade meals, leaving them for Dad in the freezer, checking up on him. Well, Amy, our nurse, I don't know what we would have done without her. We were all diagnosing Dad left and right. She stepped in and nailed it. Thank goodness for all you've done that way, for all of us. Jeff, oh my gosh. Jeff, the tech-savvy one. I mean, she still to this day will offer to make my flights because I just can't get it together to get it all right. She'll step in and do it while we're on a sister call. I'm so grateful for all of that. John, my brother-in-law, my brother, my bro. I can't be more grateful for you through the years stepping in on so many occasions. And David back there, thank you for everything, for all of you. I had an astrology reading many years ago, and it was very interesting in it because this woman said to me, it was a part I was a bit perplexed about her, because she said, there will be some really rough spots for you along the way. And I didn't like hearing that. I only wanted the good news, you know. And she said, but look here in your chart. And I read it over and I saw these dots and it didn't mean a lot to me. So she said, these are your friends. Your friends will get you through everything. The neatest part is I didn't know that my sisters ever would become friends. And look what I have. Look what Dad left me. I'm so grateful to Mom and Dad for that. Because that's what will help us move on. And my friends Jane, Ellen, oh my goodness, Chandra, if you're here somewhere, Shelley, hi Jenny. Shelley, our neighbor from forever. And then my friends Enzo and John, my ex-husbands, how wonderful is that we're all together here. Thank you for the lessons and for Dad's acceptance, his compassion, his ability to see a wider picture than the immediate drama and pain of a given moment. That's a gift he really gave, to be able to spread out, stand back, and look at the bigger picture.
We know our Shelley from right next door to our house. She grew up with us, babysat us, taught us some things Mom and Dad probably didn't want us to be taught. But, let's see, taught us to dance steps in the 50s and 60s. She's been on the periphery of our lives for 15 plus years. She needed a job, so began helping Mom, and then segued into helping Dad by preparing his meals. She kept him well fed and happy for the 7 years she was with us. She was Dad's link to the past, helped him with the New York Times puzzles, and discussed the life he couldn't get involved with anymore. About 10 months before Mom passed away, a friend of Dad's recommended Mercy to us. And a few months later, she had asthma. A friend of hers. They are truly angels on earth. I have been dealing with a nightmare trying to manage Mom and Dad's care from Atlanta. And the moment Mercy and asthma came on board, I felt like I'd have lost 50 pounds off my shoulders. They both took such sweet care of Mom on her final journey, and when she passed, there was no doubt that they would continue on with Dad. The These two women had a deep faith in God, and every action they took reflected this. Though they raised their eyebrows initially when we brought up the morning. Together, they quickly got into the routine of the Baldwin household, and Dad's persnickety ways of wanting things done. And this is what I observed. They never complained. They always kept the house clean, laundry clean, and put away. Most importantly, they kept Dad clean. When the daughters came to visit, they fit right in and made us feel welcomed. They treated Sweetie Pie as if she was their own cat. They watched endless hours of sports and actually became fans. They worked together as a team to put Dad in the best physical and mental shape possible for the longest time, whether it be tending to his multiple skin maladies, playing card games, or driving him to a friend's house for dinner, or to a discussion group put on by the group. They ended up being one of the many sisters the Baldwin girls have had over the years, and as life goes on, we hope we will be able to maintain our friendship. We love you. Ellen Singer is another one of the Baldwin sisters. She also grew up on San Luis Road, just a few doors from our house. Dad and Mom were there for her as she grew up, and she has certainly paid us back in spades. She was our anchor in the storm. When Mom or Dad were in trouble and none of us were there, Ellen and her husband Ed would go to the house and check on them, or to the hospital until one of us could get there. There is no way to explain how fully how much she helped us just by being there and offering her help. Ellen, you are the best, and we love you so very much. And Murray Cohen can't be here today, and most of you know why. But I want you all to know what a special caregiver he was for Dad. Every Friday, I've heard this 3 times I think already. It's not Tuesdays with Maury, it was Fridays with Murray. Murray came by to have a chat over a glass of wine. In the sea of emails that Dad was surrounded with, I'm sure he was so happy to have his time with Murray. In fact, if one of the daughters called while Murray was there, Dad would quickly say, he was unable to talk, he could call later. And Betty used to make her breads or her desserts, and Murray would bring them over. Knowing he was there almost every Friday made us feel so blessed that Dad had so many angels on earth caring for him. You will next hear from Charlotte Russell. You will hear from Charlotte at the end of this program, but as part of the First Congregational Church, she called on both Mom and Dad frequently the last few years of their lives. We would let Dad have alone time with her so he could bare his soul, and her quiet demeanor gave both him and we the strength to carry on. Thank you, dear Charlotte. About 2 years before Mom passed away, Dad decided she needed a cat. Mom needed a cat. So one day, we went to the Humane Society to check them out. After looking into a few cages, we saw a tortoiseshell cat, Kitty, that had just been placed up for adoption. Dad opened the cage, she came out into his arms, and it was love at first sight. Unfortunately, or fortunately, Sweetie Pie wanted little to do with Mom. She was Dad's from the get-go, and she gave him all the tactile love he needed, and he responded in kind to her. She slept on his lap, or in his arms at night. She stood guard on his red chair while he ate company, and she dozed alongside of him in the afternoon. Thank you so much, Sweetie Pie, for being there for our Dad, through thick and thin. Caregivers come in all shapes and sizes. Lastly, thank you to CPS for fulfilling all of Dad's dreams and continuing to promote them. The First Congregational Church for giving us strength for our souls. And to all those friends who climbed those many stairs over the years to give our Dad some joy.
Sisters said all the
compliment honor, invoke your passions, inform your understanding, empower your courage, give freedom to your soul, content to your hope, and meaning to your life.
In the years that I served as Bob and Joyce's church, First Congregational Church of Berkeley, I was the minister of calling and visitation. Just retired last year. I had the joy and the privilege of visiting with them in their home. I enjoyed the view and a cup of tea and a piece of Shelley's fantastic cake. Often, Bob would ask for a prayer at the end of our visit. I am honored today to invite you to join me in offering a prayer of thanksgiving in just a minute. I would like first to reflect on his life of faith. He was deeply influenced by his parents, and especially his mother, as they raised him to be a fully human person, in touch with what we would call today his inner guide, to live a life of kindness, empathy, compassion, ethical and moral behavior, and generosity. So when Bob and Joyce joined the First Congregational Church in 1963, they found a community that was compatible and supportive of their theology. That is, what matters is how we treat others and how we make the world a better place. The Bible is the source of the stories of a people that sought to live a life of love and justice and compassion. I am going to read to you these words from St. Paul, and as you listen to them through the lens of Bob. And listen to them as a blueprint for a policy about what living is about, rather than sentiment. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. This is the kind of love that Bob and Joyce lived their lives around. He applied this to all he undertook. He was a servant leader. He attended church nearly every Sunday, enjoying Joyce's singing in our chancel choir for over 50 years, and serving as our moderator, which is like a president, in 1968. He served on the Committee of Finance and Administration, as well as many other committees. He blessed our community so deeply, and they loved the community of the church. They raised their girls there, and Amy and Jennifer were married in that sanctuary. We are so deeply blessed by their presence and participation. Bob's humor, his gentle, open spirit, his gracious wisdom has greatly enriched our lives. Bob and Joyce were not so concerned so much as what happens to us after we die, as how we live. They were just too busy living full and complete lives, trusting in whatever may be. God will be there with the generous grace that they had experienced. After Joyce died, Bob became familiar with death. All of his siblings died one by one, and when Nancy died recently, it kind of took the toll that he was the last sibling. I wondered with him about that, and I wondered if he would see her again. He was content to rest in the mystery. Bob believed that in giving others space to be who they are and letting them accept the invitation into relationship was what it was all about. And he figured that God was like that too. And he was willing to enter into that relationship with God in whatever form that might take. I think of the grace notes in a piece of music is a musical score. You know, there's that little eighth note that's like a little infinitesimal pause between notes that allow the next note to be what it is. He practiced that kind of patience, that little moment when he listened, and sometimes more than a moment. And that patience, you could see that the way he and Sweetie Pie related. He never called Sweetie Pie. He never told Sweetie Pie what to do. He just sat there, and Sweetie Pie came to him. That's how we all were. We all of us climbed those stairs. We could not resist being with him. The free gifts of relationships is one of his great gifts. And the girls and their families, the four of them, they were like a rotating door coming in over time and over distance. He was hardly ever without one of them, either being there or on the phone or checking in to see how things were going. And his friends responded in kind. There was a continual stream of visitors, delighted in each moment that we spent with him. And on New Year's Day, on their anniversary, we have the singers from our church would come and sing to them, and on their birthdays too. And many of them are here today. He was fully alive until he left us. He had watched the game that afternoon, enjoyed a delicious meal that Shelley had prepared for him, and he was heading for bed with Sweetie Pie in the lead, running up the stairs. And instead of going to bed, he went home to his Creator, and through the eyes of resurrection faith, to Joyce. His life was more than well lived. It was a life fulfilled, leaving a legacy that we have celebrated here today and that we will carry with us, even as we witness what he has accomplished here in this place and what he has accomplished in the hearts of each of us. I now invite you, if you wish, to join me in a prayer of thanksgiving. God of overflowing grace and all-enveloping love, we are deeply grateful for your gift of Bob, for who he was to his family, to his school, to his church, and to the world of education. We thank you for all the good and kind influences in his life, his parents, his friends, his acquaintances, and the courageous nature of his heart that you gave him. We thank you this day especially for his boundless love of people, his joy in nature and music, his quest to know and understand the human journey, and his deep appreciation of the gift of life. For his excellence in all he set out to do, especially in the development of the college preparatory school which continues to transform lives today and into the future. For his humility, to put himself into another person's shoes, and his appreciation of the wide diversity of intelligence, aptitudes, and perspectives. For his curiosity and passion for reading, his deep longing for and to find the fulfillment that he had found. For his unfailing encouragement of others to develop their whole personhood in community. And most importantly, for his tender love for Joyce and for their family. We thank you for granting us so many years of knowing Bob and sharing in his life and faith. Help us to know that as you did not lose Bob in giving him to us, so we do not lose him as he returns to you. Bless us now as we move with courage and compassion back into a world that so profoundly needs to know that you are love and you are here. Supported by your presence and by the inspiration that Bob gave us, grant that we may strive to live more appreciative, gentler, loving lives, and to share our faith and compassion with all that we encounter, even as Bob did. We ask this in your name and in your many names. Amen.